Hello, welcome to the Relationship Rescue Summit. And I am thrilled to be speaking today with Kira Whitham. And she has a very special place in my heart because she has been not only my friend, but she has been a health advocate and supporter of me finding my way to better wellness and just a happier soul overall. So Kira is just phenomenally educated in health and nutrition. She has a master's and she has extensive training in functional medicine. She's so aware in teaching about the mind-body connection. And she has additional training, which is so dear to my heart, in HTMA, which is hair tissue mineral analysis, as well as other functional lab testing. These things are critical, and we're going to talk about these today as to why, how they affect everything. And let's face it, the top topic is relationships. So Kira, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us and begin by giving us a little history and share your journey?
Yeah. So growing up, I was someone that struggled with chronic digestive issues, just off and on, no rhyme or reason, lots of intense pain. As I got older into my teens and my 20s, still persisting at that point, had seen multiple practitioners, doctors that would run all different types of labs. I had scopes and barium drinks, and I mean, you name it, I had been through it. And every time it was, we don't really see anything wrong. I think it's just IBS, or you've GERD, you've reflux, but nothing ever, it didn't fit. I said, is this really how I'm supposed to live the rest of my life? And so at the age of, I don't know, I was in my 20s. I know that. Went back for another test. I was fed up at this point, missing out on events. Friends wanted to go do something, and all of a sudden my stomach pain comes on and I can't go because I'm suffering. And so I hit my breaking point, went back to the doctor. Right after, got really sick from the scope again. Nurses were rude. And I said, this is ridiculous. This cannot be our healthcare system. This cannot be how I'm supposed to live the rest of my life. This is not only impacting me, it is impacting relationships. Anyone I interact with, or cancellations I have to make, and people don't understand, well, why are you canceling on us? It's just a stomach ache. It's not just a stomach ache. I'm in intense pain. And so that's when I started just looking into food. As crazy as that sounds, my coach back at the time, who I was doing some training with, said, look at what you're eating right now. You're going to fast food and you're drinking beer and you're doing all these things. And it was a joke of, well, I work out so I can eat whatever I want, obviously.
Been there.
But I didn't realize that wasn't serving me, because none of the doctors ever brought it up to me. And you just assume if food's on a shelf or in a store, it's food. What does it matter? So started changing my diet, started noticing, hey, I'm not getting as frequent of occurrences as I was. And so then I decided I'm going to go back and I'm going to study nutrition and I'm going to help myself. And so I did that. And by the time I graduated, most of my issues were completely gone. I had learned so much about the human body and how what we put into our body matters. Food is medicine. Didn't realize that. And then from there it spiraled. And this story. I studied functional medicine based on my husband's own journey, studied hair tissue mineral analysis, hypnosis. It's been a nonstop journey ever since.
Can you tell us a little bit, because, I'm so passionate about the hair tissue mineral test, and just a little why I'm so passionate. I had reached out to you over a year ago and said something is terribly wrong with me because I'm not sleeping well. I have no energy and I'm gaining weight, and something is not right in my mood. Let's not talk about the nice person that I was not. And it was affecting me everywhere I went. I just was not a good person at the time because I felt horrible. And, there's fear, especially when you start putting on weight. It's like, all of a sudden, what the heck is going on? I'm not doing anything any differently. Mm-hmm. So I reached out and we talked, and you sent me the kit and I did a hair tissue mineral analysis, and it really showed a big imbalance in my minerals. And I think any woman listening has experienced someone in her life who is not listening to her when she's trying to say something and she's not being heard. I think we can all relate to that. But when it's coming from doctors, it's even more scary and more frustrating. And I found my answers with you after having gone and got blood work done. You're fine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can you talk to us a little bit about the mineral imbalance? And of course, I know in the backs of people's mind too, it's that hormonal imbalance, and you hear that all the time. And the two combined, volcano.
Yeah. Yeah. When I first learned about mineral analysis, I was like, this is the weirdest looking test I've ever seen. I've never heard of this. No one in my doctor's office has ever run this, and then just running the basic labs. But then I dug into, okay, well, what are minerals doing? And minerals are the spark plugs of our body. It's running a car, essentially. If we don't have the proper amount of minerals and the right ratio of minerals, we're going to start to deal with a lot of symptoms, mood issues, hormonal imbalance, digestive issues, weight gain, anxiety. I mean, you name it, we can pinpoint it back to minerals always. They're just such a crucial component of what's going on in our day-to-day life. And when we're looking at minerals, we're not just looking at, are you getting enough potassium? And I'm using that one because we know that one's near and dear to both of our hearts. Potassium is low in so many people. But what is that doing downstream? It's impairing stomach acid. And now we're not breaking down our nutrients. It's going to impact thyroid because thyroid hormone difficult times to tell. Yes.
That's what was happening.
Exactly. And saying I'll put myself on there. Most people think, well, no, I ran my thyroid labs. They look fine. Well, did you run a full panel? Are you only paying attention to zinc and selenium? Are you looking at iodine? Are you looking at calcium? Are you looking at potassium? And then we can talk about the calcium shell too, real quick. There's a pattern that tends to happen where calcium builds up in the body and becomes biounavailable. Calcium primarily belongs in our bones and our teeth. And what happens is when it's being excreted in soft tissue, where's that calcium? It's not in the bones and the teeth. So what's happening in the body? This is where, as we get older, it's, oh, suddenly I have osteopenia. Oh, wait, now I have osteoporosis. I'm taking more and more calcium because I'm being told that's what I need, but it's continuing to build up. It's not getting where it needs to. Yeah. So then we have to look at the other minerals and the cofactors. And what does that mean when you come into a calcium shell? That's when we feel emotionally detached. That's when we start ignoring those around us and feeling more numb. So minerals are not just impacting the systems in our body, but they're impacting everything that's going on up here and how we're relating.
Yeah, exactly. And I found that there was confusion and yes, the detachment, because that was showing up in the calcium, the sodium, the potassium, and of course, my favorite, magnesium. And I was a hot mess. But in the test itself is a whole host of showing, I mean, it's a 2-page report, but it was a case of finally having answers. And there's so many times that I think as women, we're so struggling in stuff and we just don't get it. And if we can't get people to help us understand it, especially professionals, we can feel very lost. And the scary thing is it can really send our health over a cliff.
Yeah.
Not just our relationships, but our entire, quality of life. So can you touch on that as far as when these things are happening? How was it affecting your relationship? Well, you did mention that it was affecting your relationships, but maybe a deeper understanding of why. How is it affecting maybe that mind-body connection?
Yeah, I mean, that is the mind-body connection. I'm a firm believer that everything in the body is connected. What's the old song, the arm bone's connected to the leg bone? Remember what I'm talking about?
That. Yeah. I can now hear the music in my head.
Yeah, I don't remember the words, but I know it's something like that. But it really is. And a lot of times when we're looking at symptoms in ourselves, we freak ourselves out of like, okay, I'm having stomach pains. And then, well, gosh, I get migraines twice a week, but that's unrelated. So now what else is going on in my body? And then, oh, I got this weird joint pain going on in my left leg. That's unrelated. They're all connected, just like it's all connected to our emotions, to our minerals. I mean, every single piece of what's going on in our body, it's like unweaving a web or putting together a puzzle. It really is all connected. So, I mean, even with something, we'll start with a simple example of digestive issues for myself. Obviously, that's going to impact relationships because I'm miserable. And I'm frustrated when other people can't relate. They don't understand. Well, I get a stomach ache. It's not that big of a deal. I just walk through it. I'm like, but does your stomach bloat so you look like you're 8 months pregnant? Are you vomiting up chunks of blood? And I'm sorry to get graphic here. Are you on the toilet for hours? Like, if you're not dealing with that, you can't relate. So then there's an anger, there's a frustration, and there's a sense of like, I just have a crazy life. No one understands me. There must be something wrong with me. That's a simple one. But then we get into other things of like, okay, you do have digestive issues that are maybe presenting like headaches or eczema or other things that people don't tend to think of as digestive issues because so much does start in the gut. But we have a nice little thing called the enteric nervous system, where we can talk about the vagus nerve, which is our gut-brain highway. The two are connected. So if there's something going on in your gut, and it doesn't have to present like digestive issues, I want to ingrain that because most people think, I don't have any gut issues. My stomach doesn't hurt. If you have any symptoms, there's something going on in that digestive system. And that's going to impact your neurotransmitters. So then it's going to impact your sleep. It's going to impact your mood. It's going to impact anxiety, depression, all of those things. So there's the basic level of how feeling so terrible is going to impact relationships. But then there's also the clinical aspect of what's going on within the body, of how that's affecting things. Because then we can also look at hormones, which I know we love talking about.
Yes.
Hormones are just chemical messengers. We can't just play bop-a-mole with hormones. If my progesterone's low, I'm going to take some progesterone. Oh my gosh, my estrogen's rising. I'm going to take some DIM to drop that down. Why is that happening?
Yeah.
Hormones are always responding to our environment. So those crazy mood swings, again, we've got to look back at what's going on in the body as well.
Exactly. And it can seem overwhelming to think, oh my God, I have to think of all of that. But really, when you start looking at it, it really begins to start making sense early on, and it becomes easier to follow the path.
And I
Much
also,
easier.
yeah, and a big thing of that is learning to listen to your body.
Yeah.
And I think as women, I'm going to call us out on this. We are less likely to listen to our body. Now, men are less likely to respond. They'll just power through it. I see that time and time again.
Familiar with that. Having sons, yes.
Yes, but women aren't paying attention. We're focused on our spouse. We're focused on our friends. We're focused on our children. We're not tuning into our own bodies. And when we continue to ignore those minor symptoms, like, oh, I just get a headache around my cycle. It's not that big of a deal. And, I'm only having bowel movements 4 times a week, but that's probably normal. We're ignoring all those clues. And eventually what happens? The body's going to start to scream. And that's when we get a whole host of symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have to listen. We have to learn. And especially because it's so difficult to get in this day and age, doctors to really listen. Let's face it, in their defense, they're not trained in nutrition.
Yeah, not at all.
They just aren't. And they're trained to diagnose and give the proper medicine that they feel is going to be supportive.
I'm not knocking them. They don't have enough time to spend to understand the person and their story.
Yeah. And it's so important to find someone who is working this line so that we can delve deep. And I was a person who, this was very humbling for me because I was always, take your supplements, take your supplements, take your supplements. Well, as I so learned, it's not just about taking your supplements, because it turned out that I had a huge lift in zinc because I was taking zinc. We had COVID and my zinc was way off the chart. So we take things and think, oh, take your D or take this, but there is what does your body need? And that's one thing I love about you is you are teaching to the individual woman. You're guiding the individual woman, not across the board, just take all this and take all that. And it's really about feeling that person's journey. And you do that. But how can you tell someone right now to recognize that this is their journey? And they're probably thinking, oh, great. So I have to cook this for me because I know my husband won't eat this, or I have kids in there and I can't do that. So how do you respond to someone who's now going over the edge? Because I get it.
Yeah. Keep it easy on yourself. I'm a realist. People assume, well, you're a nutritionist, you must eat all organic, you don't touch anything out. No, if my husband brings home a gluten-free donut, I'm going to eat a donut. But I have my boundaries, right? If I'm not eating gluten, I'm not eating gluten. I won't touch the artificial things, but it can be a journey for you and your family. So I have a husband, I have a 7-year-old who's picky. I get it. I'm not saying that you need to cook a gourmet meal. I'm not going to cook multiple meals either. I make one dinner every night. Everyone gets the same thing. You know, my kiddo, maybe he's not going to eat the vegetable I cooked for him, so I'm going to give him a different one. But you better believe my husband's going to get on board, or he's going to start cooking for himself.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not doing that. I don't have time for that. And yeah, I think that's where also the importance of relaying what health is. And so when I'm educating my clients, it's also empowering them to educate their family on
Yes.
why are we doing this? You know, I'm not eating this way to lose weight. I'm not doing this to torture you. It's your body needs the proper fuel to run efficiently. I want you to be healthy for our children. Therefore, we're going to do this together. And it's planning together, and it's finding easy stuff. Even with minerals, if we were to run someone's mineral test and they got crazy things, and I'm like, well, you need to eat more of these foods and more of these foods. You know, I love some smoothies. So I'm going to tell someone, okay, we need to get some more of these things in. Just throw them in a smoothie. It'll take you 5 minutes.
Exactly.
It doesn't need to be overwhelming. It might be a little bit in the start, but
Because it's new and it's adjustments.
yeah.
What can you offer as far as, we know that the mood and the way we feel physically and the way we feel emotionally carries over to other relationships. Now, I know that when I was going through mine, I mean, granted, number one, it was very much at ease because I had an answer.
Mhm.
So we began a routine. You taught me, we set up what was best for me, knock these off, add this in. But it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time. And in that process, I had to be very aware, even though I felt better having an answer, the mood was still there. The mood would still swing. And how do you support or recommend to someone who's going through, they're taking the steps, but we want it fixed yesterday, and they're still dealing, they're having to go to work, or they're having, they have their children, their spouse, or their friends, or maybe their parents' caregiver. How do you support guiding them through that emotional part of it, so that they can start healing their relationships at the same time they're healing themselves, if that's possible?
I wish I had a magic answer for this, but it definitely depends on the person as well, and what their journey looks like and what they're struggling with. If it's a sense of overwhelm, it's how can we simplify? And those of you watching, how can you simplify? You don't need to do 5,000 things at once. If you know that, okay, my diet is really not good, like I have a bagel every day, 6 cups of coffee, don't eat again until 5 p.m. Okay, well, what would serve you? Let's start with just having some consistent meals. It's the only thing you need to focus on. And then how do you feel about the caffeine intake? Do you want to cut back on that? So it's starting with one thing at a time, so you're not overwhelming yourself with 20 different things you feel like you need to do. I will also say that if we keep things simple, one of the things that one of my instructors said has always stuck with me. And she said, you maximize, you minimize, and you prioritize what's going on in your body. If you can follow those 3 things, you will always find health.
Can you
So
clarify that a little bit?
Yeah. So maximize what your body needs. So this is where you've got to get into your body and start asking, what do you need right now? Feel into it. Oh, shoot, I need some water. I think I'm dehydrated. Okay, great. Let's maximize the water intake. What else do you need? Well, I haven't had vegetables in 3 days. Let's maximize that. Go get some vegetables. Looking through anything in your life that you need to maximize. Maybe it's joy. Maybe it's completely unrelated to food or anything, but hey, I don't know the last time that I laughed. That means
big one.
uh,
Yes.
so it's maximizing what your body needs, and then it's minimizing what it doesn't need. Well, I love my 3 glasses of bourbon at night. Do you think your body needs that? Let's go ahead and minimize that. Maybe we can cut back to 2, and then eventually we'll cut back to 1. So again, it's just taking these incremental steps of minimizing what your body doesn't need. And again, looking at what's going on in the environment of, I'm spraying my house, with all these toxic fumes. Maybe I should minimize those and swap out, or minimizing, if we're going back to the emotions, people that are not serving you. And this is a hard one. People that just suck your energy, or you're always saying yes to things when you want to say no.
People pleasing.
And being a perfectionist, you got to minimize those things because they're impacting your health. And then the last one is prioritizing, which kind of bleeds back and forth with those, but what needs to be your number one priority? And that again is where you feel in, or if you're working with a practitioner, you get to decide together, what is the priority right now? Maybe it's just hydration. Maybe it's relationships. I don't know. But those watching, if you can just remember, what's one thing I can maximize in my life? What's one thing I can minimize? And what's one thing I should really prioritize? It's going to go a long ways, no matter how overwhelmed you're feeling with everything in life.
It's so important to take it serious because if we look at right now how poorly you might be feeling, and I could see based on the results of the path that I was going on based on those results and where my thyroid challenge could have ended up. Now, I did retest in a year and I was doing much better. I'd been a pretty good girl, and I was much more in balance, and things are starting to work as my body should. But that also included working up here as well. It's called practicing what I preach.
Mhm.
But let's face it, when we're talking about these things, and who can relate? The first thing our mind usually says is, oh, I can't have this. Oh, I can't have that. We right away go to, oh my God, do I have to give up my ice cream? What do you mean no bread? But these are the places where our mind goes. We suddenly feel like deprivation.
Mhm.
We forget that this can move on to something even more incredibly serious if we don't take care of it.
Yeah. And it's also understanding, because you mentioned that it takes time, and being willing to come to terms with that. If you've been struggling with chronic migraines for 20 years, they're probably not going to be fixed in a month. You gotta just trust the process and give it some time.
Yeah. And I know it's not easy. When I say I'm a good girl, I have to laugh because there were times it's like, oh, I really want to eat that. And there's times I did.
Yeah.
It's about balance, but it was so important for me. It was scary because every woman on my mother's side of the family they're all on thyroid medication. I don't want to be there.
Mhm.
And when I learned that it's not necessarily a genetic thing you're predestined for it, that was a huge awakening moment. And it fits so many things that we think, oh, I'm destined to be that because my mother is. No, not necessarily.
Oh.
Absolutely not. So there's so much that we can do to really enhance our health physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Is there anything else because you mentioned hypnosis, there's a variety of things in your toolbox. And what are some other things that you use to help us find a better relationship with our health, and of course, then letting that roll on to everyone else?
I mean, I think those are the big ones. It's sure the lab work can offer us some insight, but it's not the end all be all. I mean, I remind everyone when we get on our call, this is just a snapshot in time, right? Let's talk through your story. What are your emotions? What are the thoughts that run through your head on a daily basis that may or may not be serving you? How are those relationships, not just externally, but also internally? Do you love yourself? Do you appreciate the things that you offer to the world? And then, yeah, when we feel like it's needed, hypnosis can be incorporated in there, because I'm not even going to say sometimes, every single one of us needs to reprogram things that are going on in our.
Oh, that's a whole other. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's the foundation underneath it all.
And that relates to health too, just because you brought this up, because we go to, oh, great, now I feel restricted. You're telling me I can't have gluten. Well, there goes my bread, there goes my pasta. But something like hypnosis can be helpful, because why are those things so near and dear to your heart? Is it related to emotions that you felt in childhood? Can we bring back in those positive emotions or create new ones? Are there neural pathways that need rewiring just based on the fact that you can't give up these certain foods? Maybe we just need to do a nice gentle hypnosis to get you to see that there are other great things out there that you can still eat, So it's in the toolbox. It works for a variety of things. I've done it for anxiety. I've done it for emotional eating. So it all goes back to the client and what they're dealing with and what we feel like they need. I mean, the emotions sometimes will bring in German new medicine, which is again looking at how symptoms present based on emotions. Sometimes we'll bring in family constellation. So outside of genetics, obviously, because genes are just controlled by our environment, we can also look at ancestral patterns and how things might be presenting. And then sometimes we'll even do some energy healing, which for those that don't know what it is, if you're familiar with emotion code or body code, it's very similar. It's not a diagnostic tool, but it's going to give us some clues.
Yes, we get so wrapped up in this physical being, we forget that everything is energy, and that includes us.
Yes, 100%.
Very much so. There are going to be, I think, a couple of, well, many mindsets, but a couple of specific mindsets. Yes, I'd love to know, where do I start? Oh gosh, I just, it scares me. I would not know what to do. What can you offer as far as calming that fear and offering some tips of where someone might be able to start right now to take a step into healing?
I think first and foremost, it's creating awareness. So what are the things that you're dealing with on a daily basis that you don't like? Are they symptoms that are going on in the body? Are they emotions? Are they thoughts that are running through your head every day? Or are they patterns that you're getting into of, I'm arguing with my spouse every day. I don't know why. Create some awareness around what's going on first. And then decide, what do I need to do with this? And then thinking back again to what can I maximize that might help this situation? So if you're dealing with, I'll use the headaches and migraines again, if that's something that's a frequent thing, because it should not be frequent, just throwing that out there. Some people think, oh, a headache a week is normal. If that's you, okay, well, what do you need to maximize in your body in this very moment? And then walking through that. But you've got to have that awareness before you can take any steps. If you don't realize that you need 8 glasses of water a day, but you're drinking 2, let's get that awareness in there.
Big difference. Yes.
Yeah.
And I have some friends like, oh, I hate drinking water.
Yeah.
I'm not of course, I've been doing it for years now, so I've gotten used to it, but there's days I really would love to have something else, but I know what happens to my body when I don't, when I'm low on magnesium. In fact, you'll be very proud of me, only because my body said so. I'm basically on decaf coffee. My body just one day decided to reject caffeine and put me through a little bit of a scary reaction to it. It scared me. It was enough to really scare me. And
how you love your coffee.
Because you would say, I would see you post something and I'd go, bad girl, bad girl. But the point is, it really was a sign, and certain things with the caffeine and from different sources started to affect my blood pressure is what was happening. And it happened again recently. And I've discovered that from eating something else, but I discovered that I don't need that caffeine anymore. My body's adjusted to wake up in the morning, but it took some time. But I can just impress upon people. It can be so hard to, you're busy and you're pushing these feelings aside. It's affecting, if you're, like Kira said, if you're arguing with your partner, if you're struggling with coworkers and you're finding yourself sharp with your children because you're not feeling well. There are answers beyond just the blood test. The blood test is a 24-hour short, brief window of what's going on. Research, even if you're not sure about the things Kira is saying, research options to learn more about your body, because those relationships are not going to get better as long as you're feeling like, let's face it, like crap. And it's scary to have a huge sign slap you upside the head. We want to not get to that point. And we want to do what's best for our family, for those we love. And that means taking care of ourselves. Is there any last minute offering you'd like to give before we end?
I mean, you actually just touched on something that I think is important, and that's, besides the awareness, advocating for yourself. If you go to the doctor and you're being gaslit into it, you're just getting older. It's just
I hate that.
Yeah. Your hormones are just changing. You're a female. Okay, No. Find someone else. You know, even if you're only going through insurance-based providers, find a new one. Keep finding a new one until you find one that will actually listen to you, because you know your body better than anyone else. And if those symptoms don't feel right to you, then they're not right. And the body is talking to you. So find someone.
And you can have a great relationship with Western and what I call Eastern, but with a more natural process. You can have a great, it's not about eliminating over here, but it's about finding that good relationship so that you're finding out, excuse me, if you do need something from regular traditional medicine, sometimes very, very important, but then also you're not going to get that nutrition and that mineral advice as you would with a functional medicine expert and nutritionist. So, Kira, thank you so much. This is a conversation, you and I have talked about this so much, and we could go on for hours, but we can't, as much as I would love to. But thank you so much for being with us and offering your expertise and your beautiful energy. And I thank everyone for being here on the summit. And if you have any questions about anything and reaching out, everyone's contact information is going to be available to reach out to each expert and ask questions if you'd like. So again, thank you to everyone. I wish everyone a fabulous day. Peace and blessings.